Hey, welcome back to Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel. Thank you so much for joining me here on this road trip. If you're new to the channel, we have been working our way through Ezra, and we've already done chapters 1, 2, and 3. We're getting ready to launch into chapter 4 today. I invite you to go on ahead and look back on some older videos from this year because we've worked our way also through Nehemiah. And last year we actually went through the Gospel of John. We're already at that point of the year for me where I start really planning what I'm going to be doing in the following year. And I'm very excited about what I have planned for next year. Anyway, Ezra chapter 4. And today we're going to be looking at knowing that we're in God's will and understanding that sometimes there are things that happen that make you really kind of doubt whether or not you're there or not, and how Satan really tries to work against us. Now, I'm not here to make this all about like spiritual warfare. That does, I believe, exist, but we do need to also look at it as though, you know, we live in a sinful world and Satan likes to work through our sin. Like, believe it or not, that's what he do. That is what he do. And as we are going through this, to really stop and consider what it is that we are doing and seeing. And although I'm not going to do a super deep dive into this, I think it is important that we stop and we consider if we really believe that God is calling us to something, that we need to take a hard look at maybe why that's not happening. I have confronted this in my own life, so I feel a bit more comfortable talking about it. But sometimes there are things that happen and it really is because Satan is really trying to frustrate you and keep it from happening. And other times, sometimes it's God putting roadblocks up because he's guiding you into a different direction. Now, we're not going to dive too far on that side right now. We're really looking at how Satan is trying to frustrate you, because that's really what we see here with chapter 4. And as we go through that, we're going to take a look at how, if we're really in God's will, as the Israelites were like coming back, because it was foretold as a prophecy that they were going to return. So we know that that was God's will. The enemy will always try and stand in the way. The enemy here being Satan. And Satan will use situations. He uses people. Like I said, spiritual warfare, it is a thing. We're going to look at here is, really, we're going to kind of talk about C.S. Lewis a little bit here. I've referenced C.S. Lewis before. If you follow my blog, Road Tripping with Rachel, RACHAEL.com, then I go a little bit more into depth on like my thought process with this. But in the book, the Screwtape letters, one of the things that Lewis really does is he shows how you have these demons who are trying to frustrate this Christian that he's assigned to. And as a part of that, they try really hard. They're like, oh, we lost him to the camp of the light. And so instead of trying to pull him away, they try to make things look good. Like if we lost him, he's become a Christian. Let's make him an ineffective Christian, is essentially what it comes down to. And one of the things that I think is a good picture of this is really how the devil can sometimes make sin look very beneficial. We see this in Ezra chapter 4, and then if we look through verses 1 and 2, we really start to see that, because there it says, when the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the returned exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they approached Zerubbabel and the family heads and said to them, let us build with you, for we also worship your God and have been sacrificing to him since the time of King Esarhaddon of Assyria brought us here. Now, I've talked about it before, you know, the whole, like, it's not an ethnic issue. This is a spiritual issue. But the Israelites were told previously they were not supposed to have other people assisting in the building of the temple or in the tabernacle. The purpose of that being is, if you let them do that, then you lose your authority to be able to govern certain things. So it's kind of the foot and door phenomenon, if you're familiar with that, from having taken like a psychology 101 class. It's if you can get someone to do something small, then it becomes that much easier to get someone to do something big. So that's very effective in politics. If you can get them to do something small, you can later on get them to do something bigger. But sometimes Satan tries to make sin look like it's very beneficial, and it's a hard thing to really look at. We're in a time in our society where we're really, we do idolize things that are not necessarily biblical, and celebrating sin and excusing it. We shouldn't celebrate sin, and we try to make it look like it's beneficial. In this case, with the Israelites, the people who had been in the land were trying to make it sound like it was very beneficial, because it's more people giving of their money. It's more people who are agreeing to go and work. It's, it's financial, it's more labor. I mean, it's a good deal. Like, if I'm being honest about it, like it looked like it was a really good deal. But for them to have accepted that, okay, that then means, do you want to have idols making its way into the temple? Do you want to have, temple prostitutes? Because that was a thing. We definitely see how the Israelites will later on go down this course whenever you have Herod's temple, because Herod built a beautiful temple later on during the time of Jesus. There's the temple that's there that King Herod built, and there was all kinds of things happening where Herod was in there, participating in some of the sacrifices and doing things that he normally would have never have been allowed to do. Like, sometimes the enemy will really try and give itself sin a great appeal. I mean, we look just back to Genesis chapter 3, the idea of like, oh, well, I can have knowledge that I don't currently have, and I can make myself equal or more equal to God. That it sounds appealing to do that, but look at where we're at though now. We are in a place where we feel shame, and we can't look at ourselves and be proud of the bodies that we have. We die, we're sick, because the world is fallen. That means the human body is fallen too, and that means, sometimes we have chemical imbalances, and it causes mental illnesses, and it causes anxiety and depression, and relationship problems, because we don't know how to regulate emotions. It causes temper tantrums in little kids. It causes, dysfunction in families, and it causes schisms where people don't talk to each other anymore. But the whole idea that we can make sin look very appealing, we really need to think of what are the consequences of what's happening. And that's something that's just, I say this to, actually, I had a conversation about this like 2 years ago, about how, just something that was coming up for a vote within the Southern Baptist Convention. And I said, if we vote this way, because I was a member of a Southern Baptist church at that point, if we vote this way, these are the consequences that we need to be prepared to deal with. And I had someone with a doctorate actually tell me, well, you can't make a decision based off of what might happen. I'm like, no, because every decision you make is based off of what might happen or what you know is going to be happening. So I will argue that point. But you need to stop and think about, if I make this decision, what are the consequences I have to deal with? And consequences can be good and consequences can be bad. In this case, we're talking about a negative consequence. And sometimes the enemy really makes sin look like worship. And I find that deeply disturbing, that we use something that is meant to be communion with God, and we turn around and we make it very much us-centered, or we deliberately choose to do something and then try to baptize it into being something that's God glorifying when it's very clearly not. My current church has been going through the Bible book by book, and we were in 1 Samuel here fairly recently at the time I'm recording this. And as a part of that, we talked about King Saul and how he was told the Amalekites, he was supposed to wipe them out, and he doesn't. Instead, he saves a lot of their choice cattle and sheep and even the king. And Saul has the gall to want to do sacrifices. And then when Samuel shows up, he says, "Why do I hear the bleating of sheep and the lowing of cattle?" And Saul says, "Well, they were meant to be an offering." And Samuel just says, "God said, kill it all. Why are they here? That this is not what you were supposed to do. You were not supposed to do this. This is not only not worship, it's going completely against everything you were told to do." And ultimately, I mean, you learn like you would never mess with Samuel, because he picks up a sword and he hacks to pieces the king of the Amalekites. That's terrifying. Like, I've heard of like the grumpy old men. Like, Samuel took it to a whole nother level, man. But if you can't get people to join you, then the thing that Satan tries to do is he tries to really frustrate you, and it makes it hard, so hard to do what you really believe God is calling you to do and what you feel called to do and what other people have recognized you are called to do. And that is one of the big things, is that the enemy, he discourages you. He discourages you so much. If you look through verses 4 through verse 5, we really see this playing out in Ezra, that they're trying so hard, the people are trying so hard to do what God is calling them to do. And instead of them being able to do this, like it flatly says in verse 4 that the people who were already in the land discouraged the people of Judah and made them afraid to build. And they even bribed officials to frustrate their plans. And they did that through 2 kings. Now that is a dedicated plan, I've got to say. The fact that you would take it upon yourself to intentionally frustrate, to pay off officials to get your way, that's a lot. And it's discouraging. I can definitely talk about like how I've been discouraged, especially like, oh my gosh, over the last 8 years, I have felt a lot of discouragement in what I have always believed God has called me to do, and lots of struggling to find my way with that over what I believe he's calling me to do, but figuring out how does it get implemented. And I know you can't see my hands, but how does it get implemented? And it's hard. And sometimes you find that way and sometimes you don't. And you have to stop and rethink and get imaginative. And I've always felt, I'll share a little bit of my personal testimony with this, I've always felt called to teach and to work with churches and like small groups and to educate. But the enemy also likes to use half-truths where there's just a little bit in there. If we go back to Genesis, there's a little bit that was in there that the serpent fed to Eve. Just a little bit. That they weren't supposed to eat of the tree. And he says, oh, well, God gave you a mandate. Which, yes, it's true. God gave them a mandate. You're not supposed to eat of the tree. The serpent says you're not supposed to touch it. Mandate, but with a partial truth. As we look at verse 12, that the peoples of the surrounding area, they reported to the king that, oh, like this is a group of people, they like to rebel. They like to rebel. Like, you need to put a stop to this. And he does, because it's a half-truth. Did the people rebel? Yes. That they were a warring people? Yes. They were also a world power. Like, prior to this, they were a world power. And they only had very few uprisings during this time. And sometimes the half-truths really make it hard for you to believe that you're doing what you were being called to do. And always go back and examine scripture. Learn good hermeneutics. That is like how to interpret scripture. Like learn about the types of literature it is. Learn about what's going on in history so you can understand the cultural context in which something was. Principles matter. I talked about this last time, that we're in a completely different world than we were in anything BC or BCE. And as such, there are some things that are in scripture that if we were to take it literally, it would not apply to us in modern day. But if we look at like, what's the principle, what was the core of why this was being done or why this was being said, a lot of times we see how that principle works out, and the principle is what is stretching across time and place and culture and ethnicity. And that's enough for chapter 4, because otherwise I'm going to begin just talking more and more, and I'm sure y'all are done with this. But make sure you follow the blog. It is up at the same time that this went live. That's www.roadtrippingwithrachel.com. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification button. That way you will find out whenever these videos go live. All right, I will see you all next time. Bye.